On today's episode of the Cryptoverse. I've been keeping my eye on an increasing number of these private cities that are being built. So let's talk about Liberstad in Norway and a couple of others that I've been keeping my eye on. Vaultoro is the one-of-a-kind online exchange where you can trade between gold and Bitcoin. Reserves can be audited online at any time and are protected from confiscation and company failure. Sign up for a free account today by checking out the link in the video description below. Hi there guys, and welcome to the latest episode of the Cryptoverse, your regular dose of news and commentary on Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and blockchains. I am your host, Chris Coney. Today is the 21st of March 2017. I've got one announcement and then we'll get right into it. Yesterday I said I was looking for translators to translate the Cryptoverse on YouTube. Well, I've now formally created a job for that on Ethlance. If you've listened to the Cryptoverse for the last week or so, I mentioned I found this Ethereum-based sort of freelancer site called Ethlance, which is like Elance, but Ethlance. And I thought, hey, I'll try it out. So I've actually created a job on here for that very position. So if you're interested in translating the Cryptoverse, then apply on this site. I will put the link in the sources for you to check it out. So now let's move on to the market roundup, courtesy of coinmarketcap.com. Now it's reasonably calm in the top 10 today, but some big moves in the top 20. So let's go one thing at a time here. Now, Bitcoin has recovered some of its market share today. I was talking about this number yesterday, the Bitcoin dominance figure. And it's up to 71.9%. That's, I think it was 70 point something yesterday. Now, this is mainly due to Bitcoin being up by 3.7%. And then the two biggest market cap coins below it, Ethereum, Dash, and actually the Monero as well, they're all down, so that's closed the gap and allowed Bitcoin to regain some of its market share. And actually, Monero itself is the biggest loser of the three, with a drop of 8.2%, and that leaves Monero right now at $22.16. Overall biggest loser though, if we scroll down a little bit here to 8th position, it's NEM. Overall biggest loser in the top 20, down by 10.5%, and an individual NEM coin is now 1.5 cents. And then moving on to the top 20, so if we go outside of the top 10, we have 3 big jumpers and 1 small jumper. Now the small jumper is Steam here in 12th position, up 14.3%, putting it at 20 cents a coin. I'm actually glad to see that myself. The other day it was announced that Dan Larimer had resigned from Steemit Inc. And it was around the same time that the Steam price was slipping down and down and down. Now, rather than being the death of Steam, this seems to have been somehow given it a new lease of life. And I've noticed my rewards on the Steemit.com social media platform have shot up quite a bit recently. So, of course, I'm pleased to see that because Steemit is one of the ways that I intend to fund this very show. So that's not a bad thing. Moving on to 13th position, we have Golem, up 34.4% today. That's a big jump there, putting it at 5 cents a coin. And then Golem allows you to rent out your spare computing capacity. And it's currently in alpha right now. So if you are technically inclined, you can actually go to their website and check it out for yourself. Then we have here Iconomy, up 44.5% today. And as far as I understand it, Iconomy is like an index. It's Ethereum-based coin, and it's like an index of crypto investments. Well, in any case, an Iconomy coin is now 43 cents each, having gained that 44.5%. And then the third biggest jumper of the day is Lisk, which has gained 41.6% and is now 29 cents a coin. And Lisk is similar to Ethereum in the sense that it will enable the creation of decentralized applications. The difference with Lisk is that the apps are being built using JavaScript, which is a very widely used programming language, And with Lisk, the apps will run on side chains. Very interesting stuff, that. You can now actually download a very basic Lisk wallet on Windows and Mac and Linux, and actually, user interface wise, it looks really, really nice. Moving on now to Bitcoin wisdom to take a look at the Bitcoin price. Hopefully you saw yesterday's episode when I cleaned up a lot of the lines that I've been using over the past weeks, but if not, you can just follow along from here. Now the first thing I'll say is that we are still somewhat in no man's land here, which is when the price is in between the two moving averages. And if you're a new listener, that means this thin blue wiggly line here and this orange wiggly line here. The orange wiggly line is the average price over the last 200 days, and the blue squiggly line is the average price over the last 50 days. So this shows more recent price movements, and that shows more long-term price movements. And that's how I figure, generally which way is the price going. Never mind the big swings. If you just average it all out over a long period of time, you can sort of see whether it's turning or not. So no man's land is like, while the price can still technically be considered to be in an uptrend, according to my medium-term trend line here, all trades that you consider placing must have at least 3 pieces of evidence to support that trade, and also not break any fundamental rules. Now, the odd thing about the situation we are in right now is how far apart these moving averages are. No man's land it's not often as big as this, which kind of poses a challenge if you're an impatient trader, because there's that temptation to break that rule and jump in early, so at least you have some kind of trade on. I remember when that happened to me, I used to do that. I used to get nervous if I didn't ever have a trade on the table, and I learned the hard way not to do that. But I guess that's something that a lot of traders go through when they're learning. Now, in terms of price action, then we've got these 3 green candles right here of the last 3 days. But notice the last 2 days, we've got those wicks on top, and there are no tails. Now, actually, when I did the notes for this morning, today's candle, which you can see right here, also had a big wick on the top, and which matched the previous 2 days. But now, as you can see, it's a full-bodied candle, and the price is now up to $1,094. What I was actually looking for as the next line of resistance was this line here. It was $10.89 and since I wrote the notes, it's already broken through that. When I wrote the notes, it was actually $20 below where we are now, and in the meantime, it's gone and broken back up again, and hopefully it will stay there, because that's the 38.2% Fibonacci retracement line. But again, this is all observation until we get back above the 50-day moving average. Then we can potentially look at trades up towards that 1300 mark when, I would start getting a bit nervous about whether we're going to break that or not. So in terms of the news then, I've turned to good old the Coin Telegraph. For this article by William Suberg, published a mere 38 minutes ago, that says Bitcoin city Liberstad to begin development after Bitcoin property presale. Okay, so let me attempt to boil all this down to its essence. The question is, can society operate without a formal government administration? Now, put another way, would it work if we privatized absolutely everything? Now, I lean towards yes. Based on the research I've done in this area, the model with the property stuff in these private cities seems to be that someone buys some private land and then they sell, quote, memberships to people. That is, instead of renting out properties and becoming a landlord or formally selling the real estate to the people who are going to live there, right? And there are 3 places that we're going to look at today who all use this sort of membership model to allow these little private cities or private villages to operate like in self-contained areas and jurisdictions, if you like, despite them being inside an existing larger nation such as like Norway in the case of Liberstad, or Chile in the case of Fort Galt, or the United States of America in the case of the Garden of Eden. Now, I suppose even this model, the organization that administers the memberships is still a form of government, but that's required by the national government more than anything. It's the only way to really make this work in the current political situation that we've got around the world. So the article actually says that Norway is to get its own private activist city, Liberstad, entirely funded by the private sector. Now, what appeals to me most about this whole concept is this. Imagine if there were thousands of these private cities, and each one with its own culture and its own rules. Right? You find the one that matches your personal philosophy and the way you want to live, and then you move there. I mean, imagine how much your life would flow if you lived in a place where the residents all shared at least the same basic core beliefs. Right? You wouldn't have to agree on everything. Just the fundamental worldviews would be enough. Now, the reason I'm talking about this on the Cryptoverse is because this is exactly how I see the hundreds of different cryptocurrencies that exist. Each cryptocurrency offers a slightly different economic system, which you can then voluntarily opt into. They showcase the benefits of private currencies, and now we're seeing experiments with private cities. And then it says in the orange here that the, quote, private city, for which a land sale has run since 2015 and requires a certain uptake to be reached by June of this year, paid for in either Bitcoin or Norwegian kroner, and it will feature freehold properties and private ownership and all that sort of stuff. Now, this place is in Norway, but there's another one I've been looking at. It's called Fort Galt, and it's in Chile. And then, like I was saying, there's a place called the Garden of Eden, which is in the United States. It seems to be the same kind of model. They use a modified crowdfunding approach, like especially in the case of Fort Galt, where they collect money from the investors and future citizens as the project progresses and as they build it. And Fort Galt in particular, they also take cryptocurrencies, as you might expect. And then Fort Galt run the membership model. In that case, though, you have a membership for life, which gives you like the same use of the property as if you did own it. It just kind of has to be this membership model in order to make it work legally and for it to operate as a sort of private residency. So moving on to the yellow bit here, it says, responsible for the initial development of the, quote, free market enclave, the non-profit Liberstad Drift Association was formed by organizers John Holmesland and Sondre Gilles. Now, of course, the administration needs to be a non-profit, kind of like a government. The difference here, though, is that the government is private. Now, I'm not even sure if that is a paradox, a private government. I'm not sure if that's possible. This is all very much a new concept, so I haven't entirely got my head around it yet. And I don't think even people developing these projects have. It's experimental, and the only way to find out is to do it, right? It says the social and legislative fabric of Liberstad would follow bespoke principles with only, quote, minimal laws and no taxes whatsoever. Now, it sounds very idealistic to me, but it also sounds an awful lot like how the United States was formed. And as far as I understand, the Founding Fathers believed in keeping the government small, but look what happened over time. The question for me as we begin to build these new private cities is this. How do we prevent them from going down the same slippery slope? And the best answer I have for that at the moment is decentralization. Keep it limited to private cities so that if the administration becomes corrupt, A, it's limited to a single city, and then B, the residents can simply move to the next city that isn't corrupt. And that creates an incentive for the administration to stay honest. By having thousands of these different self-contained private cities, the administration would have to compete to offer the best quality of life for their residents. Now, that's kind of how countries are supposed to work in my mind. However, national governments are given the impossible task of governing an area that's far too large to be effective. That's why I say break it down into private cities. It says down here in the blue that the territory's legality is still under scrutiny, but the first citizenships are already claimed, the project having reportedly received 200,000 applications within a week. Now, I'll be honest with you, my interest in this trend goes beyond merely bringing it to your attention on the Cryptoverse. I'm starting to consider whether this is on my own path. There's definitely something in this for me, I just don't know what it is yet. And then the final bit in purple says that Jedlicka, who founded this place called Liberland in 2015, told Telegraph in November that the state would be prepared to migrate from Bitcoin as its official currency to an altcoin such as Dash should practical conditions around its use change. And this is where private currencies and private cities meet. When everything is voluntary, when no one is forced to continue using something that doesn't work, that's really the bottom line for me. If a city is using Bitcoin as its private currency and it's no longer fit for purpose, the city can just switch its official currency to something else in a flash, especially when the currency is digital. The private currencies have to compete with each other to be the best forms of money so that they get adopted in as many private places as possible. Now today we've only spoken about private cities and private currencies, but imagine how everything else would be transformed in the same way. Now I'll say one more thing before I close today and before the comments erupt with socialists. Imagine how much better off all the disadvantaged people in our world would be if all charities went private. They would also have to compete with each other to provide the best possible service to the homeless, to the elderly, to the disabled, etc. If I, as an income-earning private citizen, am going to donate my money to charity, I am investing in improving the well-being of someone else, and I want the maximum well-being possible for the money that I donate. And because of that, the private charities would have to work as hard as any business to come up with better, faster, cheaper, and more effective ways of housing more homeless people, providing higher and higher quality care for the elderly, and creating real economic opportunities for the truly disadvantaged. That's the world I'm helping to build, and I hope you are too. So thanks for joining me today, guys. If you liked this episode, hit the like button. If you disliked it, hit the dislike button. Please leave me a comment below with some feedback and get subscribed. And please support the Cryptoverse and boost cryptocurrency adoption by going to cryptoversity.com/podcast and becoming a patron. From just a few dollars a month, you can secure Cryptoversity's future, get unlimited access to all Cryptoversity courses, and access a private patrons-only chat group where you get direct access to me. That is all for today, guys. I'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Cryptoverse. So until then, it's me, Chris Coney, saying bye for now.